when you do a phase 1 clinical trial, you really have to go in understanding the types of patients that you're going to get. From the FDA's perspective, a phase 1 clinical trial is about safety. You're in cancer, you are going into sick patients, but you're not just going into sick patients really because because no one knows the value of this drug and no one knows the safety of this drug. The patients that end up being able to come onto the trial are really out of options. I mean, for the most part, a phase 1 first in human trial, the doctor is having a conversation with the patient, which looks like you can go to hospice and we can make you as comfortable as we can. We're out of options, right? Or maybe, throw a Hail Mary.
Yeah.
But as a company, you understand that you're getting the patients that no drug has worked for, right? Not only have they taken all the approved therapies, they're also taking a number of experimental therapies that are further along in development. And then after nothing works, then they come to your trial. So your chances of seeing anything are extremely low. Of course, like as a scientist, as a human being, you want these patients you want to offer hope, you want to have something happen. And so there's actually a story with the very first patient that entered our trial. So they had tried all sorts of different therapies. They weren't really responding. They had metastasized, the melanoma had metastasized into their lung. It had metastasized to their lymph nodes. Not a good look. And then by the time they came to our trial, they were actually advancing so rapidly, like in less than 2 weeks, between screening to see if they were eligible for our trial and actually getting our drug, which took about 13 days, they had like 40 more lesions appear on their body. They were rapidly advancing. So we gave them first dose of our drug. It's just into one of the tumors. We inject the mRNA. That causes that tumor to express this protein, which causes the immune system to attack that tumor. But then as it attacks that tumor, the immune system sort of learns what the tumors look like and then is activated to go off and kill other tumors. That's how the mechanism works here. That patient came in 3 weeks later and they looked even worse. Really, it was just like the rate of progression of their disease was like a freight train moving down the rails. It felt unstoppable. The doctor called us. This is the very first patient we had ever treated as a company and said, we're going to treat them one more time. If they come in 3 more weeks and they look, even worse than this, we're going to recommend they go to hospice and we'll make them as comfortable as we can. They came in so now 6 weeks after 2 doses of our drug, they came in at that additional 3 weeks, and 40% of the tumors had melted off. It looked like. I mean, they were just dying off. You could sort of see them. It didn't look particularly pleasant, but the patient was describing to the doctor that they felt like they had more energy, that they felt better. And then over the period of about 4 or 5 months, their disease just disappeared.
Off of the 2 doses?
We continued to give them doses every 3 weeks into their tumors. That patient now, 16 months since starting our trial, is still on the trial, has no more detectable disease. Those are the sorts of things that I think as a scientist, it just makes you go like, holy shit.
Yeah, that must be crazy, right? I mean, yeah.
I think that is professionally the most incredible. Like I don't think I'll ever forget the time like getting the call from the doctor on that second scan where they were like, a bunch of the tumors are gone. The tumors we didn't inject with the drug are gone. And that's now happened across a handful of patients.
And does that person keep getting treated now, or are now the body is just recognizing it on its own? Or
we're continuing to treat them just because of the how bad their disease was. So in clinical trials, right, you're trying to answer core questions, which is, does this drug work? Is this drug safe? But you're also learning about like, how should we use this drug? Because this is really a new era of medicine, right? We're sort of, I think, post-COVID, everyone thought we were standing on the precipice of mRNA. This is just the beginning. But like I said, the problem was COVID pulled all the timelines for mRNA vaccines up about 5 years. The rest of the technology, like what we were working on, was not we weren't pulled up other than more people. My grandma knew what mRNA is. We became a household name, for good or bad, for some folks. But I think that once we made that technological leap, we are now standing on this like precipice of genetic medicine. And as Strand is sort of trying to lead that way, we're also, we have to learn everything about these drugs. How do they work? How does the body recognize them? What's the best way to treat disease with these sorts of approaches?
So, and I know it's always tricky because you don't want to be, when you're in a clinical trial, you don't want to be too boastful about what's going on. The FDA frowns upon stuff like that, and you don't want to do it anyway. But, like out of those 35, I mean, you mentioned a few had seen somewhat similar results to the one patient you were talking about, but like, what can we say about the group as a whole?
I mean, overall, the percentage of patients that are responding is many, like orders of many multiples of the sort of percentage you would expect in this population. And I think the current response rate of patients in this setting is something like 9%. So once
it's 90 or
9.
Okay.
So, if you have stage 4 melanoma, if you fail the first line therapy, which is this drug called Keytruda or Opdivo, these checkpoint inhibitor drugs, if that doesn't work, you're about 50% of patients that will work for. The other 50%, you are maybe 9 to 11% of patients will respond to the other drugs that are available currently. We have many, from a percentage wise, this is a low number of patients, important to understand, but a whole handful of them are responding and doing well on this therapy. It's going to take, we're going to have to get to much larger numbers of patients. We're going to have to get to more rigorously controlled settings before we can really start talking about, percentages that I think are meaningful. But the thing the thing that wowed us, the thing that has wowed a lot of folks, is we didn't expect to see anyone, right? I mean, these aren't even the patients you would normally treat if your drug was approved. These are truly some of the end of the line therapeutic option patients. To see one patient respond, it would be remarkable. To see a percentage that is higher than the normal standard of care for patients with much less severe disease is borderline unheard of.
Yeah.